in nursing, not like to a crazy degree, like, you know, like we had to take calculus and like organic chemistry, but like, you have to take that, but you don't use it. You really don't use it. You know, like you're gonna use algebra. That's what you're gonna use day in, day out, is algebra, even though they make you take all these other courses. Hello. And so I landed on it because it just really coincided with everything that I wanted to do. You know, my guidance to help people, and I wanted to directly help people. You could help people in a lot of different ways, indirectly, directly, but I wanted to be the one that was right there, directly helping people. I thrive like in one-on-one contact and communication with people. So for me, it was just like a natural fit once I finally landed on it. But it took me a while. It took me a while to really land there. I was never the person that was like in high school, this is what I want to do, and they go out and they go right to college, they graduate, and that's what they're doing for the rest of their life. That was never me, you know, and that's okay.
I know that like ever since I was really young, I wanted to like work in like the medical field. It wasn't until like recently, yeah, maybe like nursing would actually be the best fit for me. I volunteered at a pediatrician, and I even like got a part-time job there. And I'm like, I know that that's the environment I feel the most comfortable in.
Yeah.
But now that I'm like applying to college and all that, I recently just realized I'm going to do like 2 years of community and a transfer. And I'm like, I currently just applied to Middlesex County, and I'm going to do, I applied undecided because that was just like what was best available. I'm kind of like little, like I know where I want to end up, but I don't know how to get there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I think you've got a good path. Like what you just shared with me was basically the path I took in terms of going to community college, get that under your belt first, and then if you want to transfer. So if you go to community, because I went to Middlesex first, and I got my associate's degree in sciences, and then you could take the NCLEX after just 2 years. You take the NCLEX, you get your RN license, you start working. You can start working after 2 years. But then for me, I always had it in the back of my mind, I might end up wanting to go for my NP, my nurse practitioner license. In order to do that, you have to, yeah, it's, you know, so I wanted to pursue my bachelor's. So I was working full time, and then I did my bachelor's from home online. So I completed my bachelor's online at Liberty University. And I just knocked it out, and I never needed to stop working. And then I actually started taking NP courses, which I took it for 1 semester, and I pulled back, only because we have 2 little kids at home. Well, one is in kindergarten, the other's only 3. And so it was just putting too much strain on our families. So that's something to think about. If you want a family one day, if you know what you want to do, just knock out the education ahead of time. Because it becomes much more stressful once you add, not as much stress when it's just you and a partner, but once you add kids to the mix, you're going to want to be home with them. You're going to want to be rolling around on the carpet with them, playing with them, you know. So it just took me too much away from my family. So I'm not saying no to NP, but I'm saying I have to pause it. Maybe once they're both.
And how long does it take to?
The NP program, 18 months. Online. Yeah. That one I was pursuing through Fairleigh Dickinson, the online NP program. BSN, so you have to get your bachelor's first, but then the BSN to NP program. Yeah.
You started working right after your RN.
Yep.
So did your job pay for you to get your bachelor's? Because I know some things do it.
So the place I was at, they had, I want to say they had an option, but I was working at that time, I was working at a subacute rehab, long-term care type of facility, and they have tuition reimbursement programs, but usually what's attached to those is you have to continue to work for them for, usually it's like a year or 2. And they had it was a brand new program for them, and the compensation that they were giving versus I would have to stay employed with them or you have to pay back the money. I was like, I'm good, I'm making enough that I'll just pay for it because I don't want to be locked in. But sometimes places do that. But the nice thing is, right out of school, you know, only doing 2 years, it was an accelerated program, the Middlesex County program. It's fast. it's fast-paced, you're not doing really anything else other than that program. I was working full-time for one semester while simultaneously doing it, and I was like, going out of my mind. I was like, it's way too much to do both. So I pulled back and then I adjusted the program and I excelled really well at it. But it's very fast paced, but then when you get out, you've got your license, you start working right away, and you're making good money. You really are making good money right out of the gate. Something I always tell people is like, well, am I gonna get a job? 1,000%. That was one of the reasons why I went into nursing, was I had already switched majors a couple times, and I was like, okay, I like school, but like, I need something to show for it. Like, I want to finish something. So I was like, nursing, 2 years, I get out, you could go online, look up, about how much you're making. I was like, I could probably support a family on that. I met my wife while I was in nursing school. She wasn't in nursing school, but we met at that time. So I was looking at everything, the writing on the wall, and I was like, I wanna get out, and I wanna, be done with school at least for a little while, and be able to actually support myself, and my wife, and a potential family down the road. And you're doing that right out of the gate. There's so many, at that time, I just kept hearing nursing shortage, was just constantly being pumped. And so I was like, okay, so not only will I be making enough money to support myself and somebody else, but I'm probably guaranteed a job like right out of school, and that's still the case. Between 2020 and 2030, they estimate that the nursing, the projected, the growth rate within nursing is like 6 to 9%. In I think it was 2022, an estimated like 4 million nurses were employed within the United States. So like 6% of that is roughly 240,000 new jobs are opening up. Another reason for the shortage too is a lot of the baby boomers that are getting older are leaving nursing because they're entering retirement age, and that's a huge population of people. So it's opening up this massive vacuum where they need nurses. I'm constantly hearing of opportunities where employers are offering all types of benefits, and not only good like health insurance and that, but sign-on bonuses, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 sign-on bonuses straight out of nursing school because they can't get enough nurses. So it's, with that, I will say, it's depending on the employer, it's a blessing, and sometimes it's a curse, because there's so much opportunity, you can easily find a job, but sometimes you gotta watch your employer, because not everyone is created equal. Some will run their ship on like a skeleton crew. They'll be a lot tighter, a lot smaller of a crew, you're working harder, versus some other ones that will employ more nurses. It's not as crazy, day to day. But it's just everything you have to juggle. But I could just like stand up here and talk to you guys forever, but I know our time is limited. Let me just see how long do we have. So we've got about another 20 minutes. Before I say anything else, because I did touch on a lot of things I was going to say anyways, do you guys have any questions? Because I want to make sure to get those questions out before we run out of time and then you don't get your questions answered. Yes?
Like the downsides, or if you have any like, I guess like the downsides of nursing.
Sure. So the one is the first one that comes to mind is what I just mentioned, is sometimes in the medical field, you'll find that it's understaffed. It depends, not on the employer, and because nurses are in such high demand, if you find that you're constantly in a situation where it's understaffed and you're being asked to do more than really one person should be required to do, just look somewhere else. Just go somewhere else. That's the good thing about it. But the understaffed nature sometimes, a downside. There's so many more upsides of it, like I really have to stop and think about what the downsides are. It just depends if you're good with like body fluids and all that kind of stuff, because you're gonna run into that, everything, some people can't handle that and they don't realize it until they start down that path. It's better to realize that ahead of time so that you don't get into a situation where you're like, yeah, I don't do this, because that's your job,
Does it take like a big like emotional toll?
I think it depends on the person. I've seen nurses that will burn out really quick because they, how can I put it, like they put all of their emotions and everything into caring for somebody. And I'm not saying don't do that, but you have to learn a way. And I say learn a way because it doesn't always come straight out of the gate. Like sometimes you have to learn it through experience. Learn a way to kind of separate those two out so that you can go home at the end of the day and kind of separate it and be home and be present and not take all of that emotional stuff home with you. I've seen nurses that have, you know, I work in hospice, so it's end of life. These people are dying. You're dealing with whether it's the patient that's, you know, crying because they're going to die, or their family. Oftentimes it's the family members. That's a big part of hospice nursing, is you're caring for the family members just as much as you're caring for the patients. So you just, I think you get used to it, you know, especially in hospice nursing. I've gotten used to it, and you learn how to just, you handle it. I don't know how to say it. I've compartmentalized it in a little bit in my mind. I don't want to detach my heart and my emotions completely, because that speaks to people, you know, when you're meeting with them, especially in hospice. You don't want to go in there and be like so cold and like clinical that you just like, you're like a robot, you know, so they really appreciate when you can empathize with them. But yeah, just learning a way to separate it out. But I've seen nurses, to your question, I've seen nurses that come in and like, they're great in the one sense that they're like so invested, but I would say they're almost too invested, because then they've burnt out and they've left. They can't, you know, they don't stay. Yes.
So like, I've like just like kind of like thought about it, like doing that as a job kind of.
Yeah.
But like for me going to college, it would be like basketball or like. So I'm like getting like a scholarship, you know.
Yeah.
So like, how would I be able to like balance the two out? Like, I don't know if you know like too much about that. If you know people who have done it, like I would obviously like, have to play basketball in college.
Right,
So
to maintain your scholarship
Yeah.
and
So
stuff.
how would I balance it out?
So I would then encourage you, if that's the route you would want to take, I would encourage you, probably don't seek out like a 2-year accelerated program. There's just for education, there's 2-year associate's degree in nursing programs, there's 3-year certificate programs, and there's 4-year bachelor programs. They all prepare you to take the same exam to get your license. So some people just want to take it a little slower. I would probably try to go that route if I were you, because if you really want to prioritize basketball at the same time, the 2-year is so accelerated and so demanding that it's not impossible. I did it, and a lot of other people do it, but it's gonna demand like almost all your time. I'm not gonna say all your time, but almost all your time. So knowing that, I would probably pursue like, you know, either a certificate 3-year or just go the traditional 4-year route. And just spread it out a little bit so that your schoolwork isn't going to be so demanding on you. Yeah. Any other questions? Yep.
What type of grades were you getting when you were in the program?
What type of grades was I getting?
Were you like a C student, or were you like?
Great question. So when I first started the nursing program at Middlesex, I was working simultaneously. Sidebar, I was working in a hospital because I wanted to see if that was the realm I wanted to work in. I started this before I pursued the program. I got a job at St. Peter's University Hospital in New Brunswick in the pharmacy department. So then, but then from there, I got to see every wing of the hospital and just get the feel. But anyways, I was working full-time at the same time that I started the program. I got through the first semester fine. I think I ended up with like a high B average. And then the second semester, still working full-time, much more demanding than the first. And I think the cutoff was 77% or better. If you got below 77, then you have to wait an entire calendar year to repeat that course. That happened to me. I got 76.12. I still remember that number. But I was working full-time and very demanding. I was like not devastated, but I was very disappointed. I tried to like pull any string I could to like, look how close I am, just push me through. they wouldn't, they were hard fixed, and now since then, I think it's lowered even more, it's like 74 or something like that. But I had to wait an entire calendar year, but in that time, I had a lot of thinking to do, and a lot of, I was like, you know what? I can't work at the same time and succeed at the level I wanna succeed at, because I didn't wanna just pass. Really, I wanted to like really internalize the information and succeed in my field. So once I quit my job, I went back that following spring and I got an A. And I got A's for the rest of the time I was in school, because I wasn't working at the same time. I'm one of 6 kids, so we have a big family. My dad makes good money, but not good enough to send 6 kids to college. So that's why I had to pay my own way or find scholarships. So a lot of scholarships in the healthcare field, a lot. Even if you do have the money, or your parents or whoever, I would still say, still seek out the scholarships, because it's free money. And it's like writing a 1-page essay on some prompt that they give you. And here's $2,000, here's $3,500. Like, it really made a difference for me. And the rest, I took out student loans. I didn't want to take out student loans because I didn't want the debt afterwards. But it really wasn't that much. For a 2-year program, I think I came out with like less than 25 grand in student loans, which compared to some friends I have, it's like 60 grand, 70 grand, 80 grand, depending on where you go to school. And making the money that you're making right out of school, you can quickly pay it off, very quickly. So, yeah, that's a convoluted answer, but that's the path I took. Any other questions? So, I talked a little bit in my intro about, it's not what you know, but who you know. I wanted to give you guys like how important it is to network and meet people and stay in contact with them, and just, you never know what string you can pull on to give you that edge into getting that job, or maybe it's like a very specific job that you want, and there's 100 or more applicants. What's going to give you that edge to get that job? It's so important to stay connected to people. So the very first nursing job I ever got, I had just graduated in May, took the NCLEX, got my license. I flooded the internet with my resume from like August through the end of September. By the end of September, I didn't get any calls back. And I was flooding every website I could find that had, that was offering positions, and I didn't get any calls back. So the beginning of October, I was like, you know what, let me just go start like knocking on some doors. Let me go in person and see if anybody's hiring. So I went to this nursing home that I went to as a kid. My church would bring us there, like as a nursing home ministry. We would bring cookies and we would sing for them, and so I had it in the back of my mind, if I wasn't finding anything, I might knock on their door and just see what's up. So I showed up there one day, and before I even got out of my car, I just prayed, because I wasn't getting anything back online. I just prayed. I was like, God, if this is where you could see me work and this is going to be a good fit for me, give me favor. That's specifically what I asked for. God, give me favor. I went inside. I asked the receptionist, whether or not they were hiring. The administrator was right behind her. He overheard me. He gave me a application. He's like, here, fill this out. We'll take it. We'll review it, and we'll call you, if we need you, to come back in for an interview. So I'm sitting there filling it out. He comes around the desk, comes to me after like 5 minutes while I'm filling it out. He's like, oh, the director of nursing is here, actually, and she wants to interview you now. Like, I had kind of dressed to impress, like I had the button-down shirt tucked in, like I was, just in case this was where I was going to work, I wanted to make a good first impression. So I went back and I walked into the director's office, and we're chatting for maybe like 2 minutes, and then it comes out that she brings her grandchild to the church youth group that I attend. She brings her grandchild there. She was just there. We just had like a special gym night at an adjacent school. And she was like, I was just at... So now we're talking all about the church and her grandkids, and she's showing me pictures. She basically took her like papers and she just pushed them over to the side, and she was like, when can you start? So when I say like network and keep in contact with people, and it's not it's not what you know, but who you know. Like, that's one example of how it was who I knew and a connection that was made that came out in the interview process, that she was just like, it was a done deal. Like, she almost didn't want to hear anything else. She was just like, you got a job, when can you start? That was the first time something like that happened. The second example of networking that really worked out for me, in my favor, was by the time I left, or I was getting ready to leave that employer, I was the unit manager. So I was in charge of 56 beds, patients, all the nurses, all the aides that were giving them care. And as the unit manager, I had a lot of touch points with all different hospice agencies, all the marketing reps that would come in trying to drum up referrals, the nurses that would come in. So I already knew all these different agencies. I could see the ones that were better in their care for our patients, the ones that were like, you guys, I barely even see you guys. So I sought out, I just showed up one day, again, just showed up, went into the office. Hey, are you guys hiring from this specific hospice agency? Once they saw who it was and they knew that I worked at this particular facility, I started seeing people that I knew in there. It was like a big reunion. We just started, oh, John from this facility. And again, it was basically like, they were like, when can you start? So just the power of networking, talk to people. Like, even if you're out there in the field and you meet people, never burn a bridge. I've seen nurses that just like, they're like, bye, and they'll burn a bridge on their way out. Like, there's a lot of different places you go work, but realistically, like the healthcare field, you're constantly bumping into people that you knew from this job or that job. So you never want to burn a bridge. Just keep your peace with everybody as far as it is with you, and you're going to go a long way, because you never know who you're going to meet over here is going to actually give you a job over there. So it's very important, networking and just treating people with respect. It's worked out for me twice. What else can I share with you guys? So one thing that we were encouraged to think about in prepping for this, bless you, was how is being a Christian affected how you do your job? Or like, what's the tie-in between Christianity and nursing? It's so easy to tie in the Christian values and belief system into nursing. It's like, if you're looking for something that intersects like your faith and your vocation meet, nursing is like so easy. There's so many people I meet in the nursing realm and just in the medical field at large that have a Christian background because of what the Bible teaches. To look after those who are in need, hurting, helpless, the orphan, the widow, the sick, the dying, the oppressed. That's like the heart of Jesus, is to care for people that are in those circumstances. And that's exactly what you're constantly going to see as a nurse. I just so happen to work in a specialty that's like, they're the sickest of the sick. Like, I mean, sometimes people come on our service and they die within 3 days. Sometimes they come on our service and they die within a year and a half. It's and everything in between. There are a lot of situations where you can leave your faith and you can speak openly. There are a lot of other vocations that you're not allowed to speak openly about your faith. Like, that they don't allow you to do that. It's worked into their doctrine and their rules for the job. But nursing, I found that it's very open. Oftentimes people are in situations where they're kind of lost themselves. Maybe it's the patient themselves, maybe it's the family member that, they're watching their loved one, be sick or dying, whatever it is, and they're kind of lost. That's when people are most open to talking about spiritual matters and faith and God and all the rest. So, James 1:27 says that religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction and to keep oneself unstained from the world. This is something that kind of like is a life verse for me, because it's talking about orphans and widows. And in that time, in Bible times, these are people that really didn't have any rights. If you were a widow, like, you really needed to be attached to your husband or somebody else that was gonna advocate for you. So as a nurse, you're constantly advocating for people. You're kind of the middleman or middlewoman, however you wanna put it, between patients and the doctors, or patients and the families. And you're like the hub. Everybody is kind of coming to you, and it goes back to the patient. So you're constantly advocating. You're going in, you're seeing what's going on with the patient, and you're identifying through training and experience, you're identifying different situations that are going on with them. And then it's up to you to then report that back to the physician in order for that person to get the highest level of quality care that they could get. So you become an advocate. There's lots of teaching. If you like teaching, and it's not up in front of people, it's more one-on-one, but you like imparting knowledge, you could see yourself doing that. There's a lot of that in nursing. You know, there's constantly situations where people, they need knowledge to be able to care for their loved one. Or they need knowledge, just help me understand what's going on with mom. Why is this happening? Why is that happening? So there's constantly, situations where you're teaching. There's a lot of hands-on stuff. Before we run out of time, I don't want to neglect to mention that I was encouraged, before I even graduated nursing school, I was encouraged to find a niche within nursing where I'm using a lot of my hands-on skills. The hands-on skills that you learn in nursing school and then you learn out in the job. Find something that's not just like you sitting behind a computer. You can do that as a nurse. If you want to be behind a desk all day, you can do that. If you want to be in administrative roles and meetings, you can do that. If you want to be right at the bedside, you can do that. But they were basically encouraging me, learn a lot of the hands-on skills first, so that, and they were like, just do it a year. If you don't always want to be at the bedside, that's fine, but just do it a year, because then that's gonna better equip you to do whatever you decide to do in nursing, if you stay in nursing after that. Whether you stay at the bedside, you're gonna develop all those skills and become proficient at it, or you're gonna end up in a managerial position and be telling other people what to do. How can you tell other people what to do if you yourself haven't had your hands on it and can't speak from experience? So I'm glad I did that before I went into hospice. But now that I'm in hospice, like, I go into homes, it's just me. It's just me, the medical professional, and the patient and the family. Yes, I have access to, my colleagues. If I have a question, there are other nurses part of our team. There's social workers, chaplains, aides. It's a whole team approach in hospice. But by and large, like, it's just you. And so you need to know your stuff, and you need to command that situation and give them all the education that they need, address the patient needs as they happen. So
All right, our first session is coming to an end. Thank you so much. Be sure to say thank you on the way